All right, hey everyone. I think this is part 5, and let's just trudge along. Like I said, my goal is if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want every single thing I know about the King James Bible and serpent seed to be captured on video and uploaded to YouTube. So, that's my goal. And if you're interested in serpent seed, you may have stuck with me this long. If you haven't, if you're not interested in serpent seed, I suspect you've turned the video off a long time ago. So let's go on. I think in the last, excuse me, in the last of part 4, we talked about the phrase "uncovered your father's nakedness" and where to go get that phrase defined. That's a very specific phrase, has a very specific meaning. Okay, I think I also talked about all the races of the world can be tracked back to one of 3 of Noah's sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Africans, Asians, or Europeans, right? All the races of the world can be tracked back to one of 3 of Noah's sons, Africans, Asians, and Europeans. Okay, I want to read you guys Daniel 4:11 through 25. Daniel 4:11 through 25. Because you need to understand when the Bible talks about trees, right? And some of the metaphors that the Bible uses when it refers to trees. And we know that the tree of life many times in the Bible is referred to the righteousness associated with Jesus Christ. The tree of life is associated with that. The tree of knowledge and good and evil ain't necessarily associated with the righteousness, right? And there are very bad trees given as examples, and I want to give you one example in Daniel 4:11 through 25. Here we go. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof, the fruit of the tree, right? The fruit thereof, they ate the fruit. The fruit thereof much, and in it was the meat for all. The beast of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the visions of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and an holy one came down from heaven. A holy one came down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, hew down the tree, and cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beast get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast in the grass of the earth, and let his heart be changed from man's. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had seen. Now thou, O Belshazzar, which is another name for Daniel, declare the interpretation thereof, for as much as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation, but thou art able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in thee. Then Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. Belshazzar answered and said, My lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof thine enemies. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much in it was meat for all, under which the beast of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. Now here's the plug right here. It is thou, O king, right? He's saying there was a tree that was grown up way beyond all the other trees, lifted itself up into heaven. A holy one came and wanted to cut it down. That tree is thou, O king. He's saying, king, that tree's you. Thou art grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown and reacheth unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven, and saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast of the field, till 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which is come upon my lord the king. Thou shalt drive thee, that they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beast of the field, and they shall make thee to eat the grass as oxen. He's going to make the king eat grass. And they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. That Daniel chapter 4, I know I took a lot of time reading it. It's very important that you understand that trees are used as allegorical, metaphorical symbols for other things such as people and kings. You don't believe me on that? Let me read you Ezekiel. I want to read you Ezekiel 31, 3 through 8. Ezekiel 31, 3 through 8. And it's the same thing. And it even talks about the Garden of Eden in this one. Ezekiel 31, 3 through 8. Behold, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches, and with a shadowing shroud, and of high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. The waters made him great, and the deep set him up on high, with his rivers running around about his plants, and sent out her little rivers unto all the trees of the field. Therefore his height was exalted above all the trees of the field. Satan wanted to exalt himself above everything else, including God. And his boughs were multiplied, and his branches became long, because of the multitude of waters when he shot forth. All the fowls of heaven made their nest in his boughs, and under his branches did all the beasts of the field bring forth their young, and under his shadow dwelt all great nations. If you think all the great nations are dwelling under something, who do they look like they're dwelling under today? Satan. Okay. Thus was he fair in his greatness, in the length of his branches, for his root was by great waters. The cedars in the garden of God could not hide him. The fir trees were not like his boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like his branches. Nor any tree in the garden of God was like unto him in his beauty. I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches. Talking about that tree, Satan was an angel of light. He was made fair. He was very beautiful. So that all the trees of Eden, now we're talking about the Garden of Eden. Ezekiel 31 talks about a tree lifting himself above everything else that was a bad tree, and it's in the Garden of Eden. Do you not think that there's something going on here with this passage and a tree, possibly the tree of knowledge of good and evil? All the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. Therefore thus saith the Lord God, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, just like Satan did, and he has shot up his top among the thick boughs, and his heart is lifted up in his height, I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. He shall surely deal with him. I have driven him out for his wickedness. You just saw all those verses, and the tree was wicked, right? And strangers, the terrible of the nations, have cut him off, and have left him upon the mountains, and in the valleys his branches are fallen, and his boughs are broken by all the rivers of the land, and all the people of the earth are gone down from his shadow, and have left him. Upon his ruin shall all the fowls of the heaven remain, and all the beasts of the field shall be upon his branches. A tree, the Garden of Eden, it was wicked. It tried to lift himself above everything else. And you're not telling me that's not referring to the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil? I think that it is. Okay. Let's talk about some specific words. One of the specific words is the word garden. Okay. What does the Bible say about the word garden? Let's go to the Song of Solomon. If I can find it, there we go. Let's go to the Song of Solomon 4:12. Song of Solomon 4:12. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Now you have to understand how the Song of Solomon was written. I believe that Solomon wrote it about the daughter of Pharaoh. Even though I believe that when he started, the trespass of Solomon was the demise of Israel, because he brought in all these other cultures and he had all these wives and he brought in all their gods, right? But the Song of Solomon is written and included in the Bible for a reason, right? And it says, a garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. See, if you read the Song of Solomon, what I believe it's about is this woman who was the daughter of the Egyptian Pharaoh was Solomon's favored wife. And there's times in there where this book refers to the daughters of Israel. Leave them alone, or the reason it keeps stressing my sister and my wife, because you think that's a repugnant to be married to your sister. It wasn't like he was saying that this daughter of Egyptian Pharaoh was his real sister. It's basically saying, like, hey brother, he calls somebody a brother. It's like, I know that the rest of Jerusalem is rejecting you. The rest of Jerusalem doesn't like you as the daughter of Pharaoh, but you're my favored wife. So every time I refer to you, I'm going to call you my sister, my wife, right? You are part of us. You're part of Israel. You're part of Jerusalem. And so he uses that phrase, my sister, my wife, to try to make her feel included as part of Jerusalem and as part of Israel. That's what I think. Now, it's just like today when you say, hey, brother, you're trying to make the guy feel like, hey, you're my brother, man. It's the same thing. He's saying my sister, it's his favored wife. But she has a complex about not being included as part of Israel. So you see that my sister, my wife all the time. But the point I want to make is in verse 12, it says, a garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse. A garden is referred to as part of a loved one, a body. Okay, if you read 4:16, awake, O north wind, come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat the pleasant fruits. It sounds very similar to what's going on in the Garden of Eden, right? Come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. And it's talking about my sister, my wife, the one who I love. Okay, also in Proverbs 5:1, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink abundantly, O beloved. I have come into my garden, my sister, my wife. I have come into my garden, my sister, my wife. You're relating a garden to a situation where you have a loved one, right? So that's the word garden. Let's keep moving on. Let's see what else I got. We talked about Solomon's downfall was the Pharaoh's daughter. Adam's downfall was Eve, right? Solomon's downfall was the Pharaoh's daughter. Adam's downfall was Eve. They both talk about gardens and loving the one that they love, right? The word eat, I'm running out of time. Let me start a new one, and I want to talk about the word eat, and I want to talk about the word touch.